The cold, thick strawberry milkshake ran down the back of my neck, soaking into the collar of my favorite flannel shirt. The entire diner went dead silent. Standing over me, Sheriff Dominic laughed, a cruel barking sound that echoed off the tiled walls. I didn't wipe it off. I didn't flinch. I just looked across the table at my wife, Amelia. I expected to see anger in her eyes. I expected her to stand up and defend me, but what I saw broke me more than the humiliation ever could. She just looked annoyed. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. It was a Tuesday afternoon in early October, the kind of day that usually feels crisp and clean, but now looking back, I remember it as the day my life started to rot from the inside out. We were sitting at the Rusty Spoon, the only diner in our small town that served decent coffee. I had been looking forward to this lunch all week. Since retiring from the Navy 3 years ago, I had tried my hardest to just be Logan, not Commander Logan, not the guy who led night raids in places that don't exist on tourist maps. Just Logan, the guy who fixed old trucks and loved his wife. Amelia and I had been married for 5 years. She was beautiful in that sharp, classic way. Dark hair, intelligent eyes. But lately, those eyes had been looking past me, not at me. We were sitting in our usual booth, and I was telling her about the engine trouble in my pickup, trying to make conversation. She was scrolling on her phone, barely nodding. Then the door chimed. The air in the room changed instantly. Sheriff Dominic walked in. Dominic wasn't just a lawman. He was the king of this county, or at least he acted like it. He was a big man, tall and broad, but soft around the middle. The kind of muscle that turns to fat when you stop working, but keep eating. He had that arrogant swagger of a man who has never been punched in the face and truly deserved it. He didn't sit at the counter. He walked straight to our booth. "Well, look who it is," Dominic said, his voice booming. "The town ghost." He called me that because I kept to myself. I didn't go to the town council meetings. I didn't drink at the bar on Friday nights. I just wanted peace. I looked up, keeping my face neutral. "Afternoon, Sheriff. Afternoon," he scoffed, looking around at the other patrons to make sure he had an audience. "It's 2 o'clock, Logan. Most men are at work, but I guess when you live off the government's dime, every day is a holiday, right?" He grabbed the back of my booth, leaning in close. I could smell his cologne, expensive, musky, and overpowering. "I earned my retirement, Dominic," I said quietly. "I'm minding my business." "You should try doing the same," the diner gasped. You didn't talk back to Dominic. Not here. Dominic's face turned a shade of red that matched the ketchup bottles on the table. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He reached over to the table next to us, where a kid had left a half-finished strawberry milkshake. "You know what I think, Logan?" Dominic whispered just loud enough for Amelia to hear. "I think you're trash. I think you came to my town because you couldn't hack it in the real world. You're just a stray dog looking for scraps." And then he tipped the glass. The pink sludge hit my head with a heavy slap. It was freezing cold. It oozed down my forehead, over my ears, and dripped onto my hands, clenched in my lap. My heart rate didn't jump. My breathing didn't hitch. In my mind, a switch flipped. It was the old switch, the one I hadn't touched in years. Threat assessment. Target: male 6'2" in approximate 240 pounds. Stance: off balance, right hand occupied with the glass. Action: strike throat, sweep leg, incapacitate. I could have ended him before the glass hit the floor. I could have broken his wrist in 3 places and slammed his face into the table. It would have taken me less than 2 seconds, but I didn't move. I was a SEAL. We don't fight for ego, we fight for survival, and beating a small-town sheriff into a coma in front of 20 witnesses wasn't survival, it was suicide. "Whoops," Dominic grinned, tossing the empty glass onto our table. "Slippery hands. Clean yourself up, trash. You're ruining the appetite of the good people in here." He turned and walked away, laughing. The diner was silent. No one moved to help me. They were all terrified of him. I took a napkin and slowly wiped the milkshake from my eyes. Then I looked at Amelia. This was the moment. This was when my wife, the woman I promised to protect, and who promised to love me, should have been screaming. She should have been throwing her water in his face. She should have been grabbing my hand, telling me, "Let's go," telling me he was a monster. Amelia was staring at the table. Her face was pale, but her jaw was tight. "Amelia," I said, my voice calm. She looked up. Her eyes were cold, ice cold. "Great," she hissed. "Just great, Logan." I blinked. A drop of pink liquid falling from my eyelash. What? Why do you always have to antagonize him? She whispered furiously, grabbing her purse. He's the sheriff, Logan. You know how he is. Why couldn't you just keep your mouth shut? I felt like I had been punched in the gut. He just dumped a drink on me. Amelia, I didn't do anything. You exist, she snapped, standing up. You just sit there with that look on your face. You think you're better than everyone. That's why he hates you. She threw a $20 bill on the table, not even looking at me. I'm going to the car. Don't make a scene. You've embarrassed me enough for one day. She walked out. She walked right past Dominic, who was standing by the door, and for a split second, I swear I saw it. Dominic stopped laughing. He looked at her and he gave her a nod, a small, subtle nod, and she didn't look away. She didn't glare. She just lowered her head and walked out the door. I sat there for another minute, the sticky mess drying on my skin. The humiliation of the milkshake was fading, replaced by something much colder, much sharper. I had been trained to spot patterns, to see things that didn't fit. Dominic bullying me. That was just a bully being a bully, but Amelia blaming me, Amelia walking past him without a fight. Something was wrong. I stood up, leaving the mess on the table. I walked out into the bright afternoon sun, feeling the eyes of the town burning into my back. I got into the passenger seat of our car. Amelia was in the driver's seat, gripping the wheels so hard her knuckles were white. "Drive," I said. She started the car, peeling out of the parking lot. "I don't want to talk about it," she said, cutting me off before I could speak. "Just let it go, Logan. He's powerful. We can't win against him." "I wasn't trying to win, Amelia," I said, watching the side of her face. "I was trying to eat lunch with my wife." She didn't answer. We drove in silence for 10 miles, but the silence wasn't empty. It was heavy. It was screaming with things unsaid. When we got home, I went straight to the shower. I scrubbed the sugar and milk off my skin, the water turning pink as it swirled down the drain. I stood there for a long time, letting the hot water burn my back. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. Amelia thought I was just a retired mechanic. Dominic thought I was a drifting loser. They didn't know about the trident tucked away in my bottom drawer. They didn't know about the medals I never wore. They didn't know that I had hunted men who made Dominic look like a choir boy. I turned off the water and stepped out. As I dried off, I heard Amelia's voice from the bedroom. She was on the phone. Her voice was low, hushed. I know. It was bad. She was whispering. He didn't do anything. No, he suspects nothing. Stop it. I'll see you later. Yeah, but I stood frozen in the bathroom doorway, the towel in my hand. He suspects nothing. My blood ran cold. The milkshake was a distraction. The humiliation was a show. The war hadn't ended when I retired. It had just followed me home, and the enemy was sleeping in my bed. I stood in that bathroom doorway, water dripping from my hair onto the bath mat, listening to the silence that followed Amelia's phone call. My chest felt tight, not with panic, but with a cold, heavy realization. He suspects nothing. I didn't burst into the bedroom. I didn't shout. That's what an amateur would do. That's what an angry husband would do. Instead, I quietly stepped back into the bathroom, turned on the faucet for a few seconds to make noise, and then walked out loudly, drying my hair with a towel, as if I hadn't heard a thing. When I entered the bedroom, Amelia was sitting on the edge of the bed, her phone face down on the nightstand. She jumped slightly when she saw me. "Feel better?" she asked. Her voice was too bright, too normal. "Clean at least," I said, tossing the towel into the hamper. I sat down in the armchair in the corner, watching her. "Who was on the phone?" She didn't even blink. "Just my mom. She wanted to know if we were coming for Sunday dinner." Lying came easy to her now. I could see it. There was no hesitation, no tick, just a smooth, practiced deception. Her mother lived 3 states away and hated talking on the phone before 5 p.m. "Right," I said. "Sunday dinner. Logan," she sighed, standing up and walking over to the mirror to fix her hair. "About lunch. I'm sorry I snapped at you. I hate seeing you get pushed around. It makes me feel unsafe." Unsafe. The word hung in the air. I wasn't pushed around, Amelia. I chose not to engage. I corrected her gently. "There's a difference. To Dominic, there isn't," she said, turning to face me. Her eyes were hard again. "To this town, there isn't. You let him humiliate you. And now everyone thinks my husband is a coward." She grabbed her keys. "I'm going to the store. We're out of milk." She walked out without kissing me goodbye. As soon as I heard her car pull out of the driveway, the atmosphere in the house shifted. It felt empty, hollow. This house, which I had bought with my savings, which I had spent months fixing up, sanding the floors, painting the walls, suddenly felt like enemy territory. I didn't go to the kitchen, I went to the garage. I locked the door behind me, and went to the heavy tool chest in the back corner. I pulled out the bottom drawer, reached underneath the false bottom, and pulled out a small black Pelican case. Inside wasn't a gun. It was something far more dangerous in a situation like this. It was my old tech kit, bugs, rudimentary listening devices, a few pinhole cameras I used to use for perimeter checks. I wasn't going to confront Amelia based on a hunch. In my old life, you didn't pull the trigger until you had positive identification. I needed proof. I spent the next hour working quickly. I placed a small audio recorder behind the headboard of our bed. I slipped a GPS tracker, an old magnetic one I had to charge up, under the rear bumper of her car. It was risky, but I had to know where she was really going. When she came back an hour later, she had the milk. She also had a strange smell on her. It was faint, masked by her perfume, but I caught it. Cigar smoke. Dominic smoked cigars imported once. I had seen him chewing on them outside the station. I took the grocery bags from her, smiling. "Thanks for getting these." "No problem," she mumbled, avoiding eye contact. The next few days were a master class in psychological warfare. I played the part of the beaten dog perfectly. I stayed quiet. I didn't go into town. I let Amelia think I was wallowing in shame. Meanwhile, Dominic ramped up his game. On Thursday, I was driving my truck to the hardware store when blue lights flashed behind me. It was a deputy I didn't recognize. Young, nervous-looking. I pulled over. The deputy walked up, hand on his holster. "License and registration," he barked. "What's the problem, officer?" I asked, handing over my papers. "You swerved," he said. "Crossed the yellow line." I hadn't. I drove with the precision of a machine. "I don't believe I did." "Are you arguing with me?" The kid snapped. "Step out of the vehicle." He made me stand on the side of the road for 45 minutes while he ran my plates. Passers-by slowed down to gawk. I saw neighbors pointing. "Look, there's Logan getting into trouble again." When he finally let me go, he handed me a ticket for reckless driving and failure to obey. "Sheriff sends his regards." The deputy sneered as he walked away. I took the ticket. I didn't crumple it. I placed it neatly on the passenger seat. This wasn't just harassment. This was a dismantling. They were trying to paint a picture of me. Unstable, reckless, a troublemaker. If something happened to me later, if I disappeared or got locked up, nobody would question it. That night, lying in bed next to Amelia, I stared at the ceiling. She was asleep, breathing softly. I reached under the mattress and pulled out the small earpiece connected to the recorder I'd planted in the living room earlier. I listened to the audio from while I was held up at the traffic stop. Click. Amelia's voice. "He's going to be late." "Your deputy has him stopped on Route 9. A male voice. Deep growly. "Dominic, good. Let him sweat. Did he say anything to you this morning?" "Amelia?" "No. He's pathetic. Dom. He just mopes around the house. He has no idea. When are we going to do it?" "Dominic. Soon. I need him to snap first. I need him to do something violent, then I can arrest him, revoke his pension access through the court, and we take the house." "Amelia, I just want it to be over. I'm tired of pretending to love him. He's so boring. He's nothing like you." Click. I took the earpiece out. I turned my head and looked at my wife. In the moonlight, she looked like an angel, but beneath that skin was a rot so deep it made me sick to my stomach. She wasn't just cheating, she was conspiring to destroy me. She wanted me to snap. She wanted the violent soldier to come out so they could lock me away and steal everything I had built. They wanted a monster. I closed my eyes. No, I wouldn't give them a monster. A monster is messy. A monster makes noise. I was going to give them a ghost. I needed help. I couldn't do this alone. Not with the law enforcement of the entire county against me. I needed someone outside the system. Someone who knew how to navigate the shark-infested waters of military law and civilian corruption. I waited until Amelia was in the shower. The next morning, I went to the garage, pulled out a burner phone I kept for emergencies, and dialed a number I hadn't called in 4 years. It rang twice. "This line is for secure comms only." A sharp voice answered. "Identify, Preston." I said, "It's Logan. Viper 2 actual." There was a long pause, then the voice softened, losing its robotic edge. "Logan, hell, I thought you were dead or herding sheep in Montana. What's wrong?" "You never call. I need a jagged edge, Preston," I said, using our code for legal intervention. And I need it fast. I've got a hostile target and it's local law enforcement. How hostile? They're sleeping with my wife and trying to frame me to seize my assets, I said, my voice flat. Preston whistled low. That's messy, brother. Where are you? Small town? Nowhere, USA. I need you to dig. I need financials on a sheriff named Dominic Vance, and I need to know how to legally bury a man who owns the judge. I can be there in 12 hours, Preston said. Sit tight. Don't engage. Do not give them a reason to cuff you. I won't, I said. I'm done playing their game. I'm starting my own. I hung up and destroyed the SIM card. When I walked back into the kitchen, Amelia was pouring coffee. She looked at me with that fake concern again. You okay? She asked. You look intense. I forced a smile. It felt tight, but it held. I'm fine, honey. I lied. I was just thinking. Maybe you're right. Maybe I should go apologize to the sheriff. Clear the air. Amelia's eyes widened. A flash of panic or excitement. Really? She asked. You do that? Yeah, I said, grabbing my keys. I think it's time we all understood exactly where we stand. I wasn't going to apologize, but I needed her to think I was breaking. I needed them confident, because overconfidence is where the enemy makes mistakes, and I was going to catch every single one of them. The drive to the sheriff's station was only 10 minutes, but it felt like crossing a border into a hostile nation. I had told Amelia I was going to apologize to clear the air, but that was just tactical chaff, a distraction to keep her off balance. I wasn't going there to beg. I was going there to perform reconnaissance. When I walked into the station, the atmosphere was thick enough to chew on. The receptionist, an older woman named Brenda, who used to wave at me in the grocery store, wouldn't even meet my eyes. She just pointed a thumb toward the back office. He's expecting you? She muttered. Expecting me? Amelia had texted him. Of course she had. I walked down the narrow hallway, the linoleum peeling at the corners. Photos of Dominic shaking hands with the mayor and the governor lined the walls. A shrine to a tyrant. I pushed open the door to his office without knocking. Dominic was sitting behind a mahogany desk that was too big for the room, leaning back in a leather chair that groaned under his weight. He was cleaning a handgun, a chrome-plated .357 Magnum, that looked more like a movie prop than a service weapon. Well, Dominic smirked, not looking up from the gun. The prodigal trash returns, Amelia said. You were coming to kiss the ring. I stood in the doorway, keeping my hands visible but relaxed. I came to ask what it takes to end this. Dominic, he laughed, a wet hacking sound. He placed the gun on the desk, the barrel pointing uncomfortably close to my direction. End it. He looked at me with mock confusion. Logan, we're just getting started. You see, this town has an ecosystem, predators and prey. You walked in here thinking you could just exist without paying your dues. I pay my taxes, I said calmly. Not those dues, he snapped, his eyes narrowing. Respect, submission. You walk around like you're made of stone. It annoys me, and it annoys your wife. There it was. He was dangling it in front of me, daring me to react. Amelia is unhappy, I said, testing him. She says I'm boring. She says you're a corpse, Dominic corrected, his voice dropping to a cruel whisper. She says being with you is like living in a funeral home. She needs a real man, Logan, someone with power, someone who takes what he wants. He stood up and walked around the desk, stopping inches from my face. He was taller than me, heavier. He used that size to intimidate most men. But size doesn't matter when you know exactly where the vagus nerve is. Here's how this ends, Dominic hissed. You leave. You pack your sad little truck. You sign the divorce papers. She's going to serve you next week. And you disappear. You leave the house. You leave the pension accounts. You leave her. And if I don't, Dominic smiled. And it was the ugliest thing I had ever seen. Then I'll make sure you get pulled over with a trunk full of meth. Or maybe you resist arrest and take a bad fall down some stairs. Accidents happen, Logan. Especially to lonely men. I held his gaze for 5 full seconds. I memorized the pores on his nose, the smell of his stale coffee breath, the slight tremor in his left hand, probably high blood pressure or early onset alcoholism. I understand, I said softly, loud and clear. Sheriff, I turned and walked out. That's right, he shouted after me. Run away, little man. I walked out of the station and into the blinding sunlight. My heart was beating slow and steady. He wants my assets. He wants the house. He wants to frame me. This wasn't just about sleeping with my wife. This was a robbery, a slow-motion heist of my entire life. I got back in my truck and drove to the edge of town to an old motel called The Pines. It was run down, the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour. I parked in the back and waited. 20 minutes later, a black sedan pulled in next to me. The window rolled down. Preston. He looked exactly the same as he did in the teams. Sharp features, neatly trimmed beard, eyes that missed nothing. But now he was wearing a $3,000 suit instead of fatigues. "Nice truck," Preston said, stepping out. "Fits the sad country song vibe you've got going on." I got out and shook his hand. It was a firm, grounding grip. "Good to see you, brother. Let's not get sentimental," Preston said, opening his trunk. He pulled out a silver metal briefcase. "I ran the initial financials on your sheriff. You were right. It's a mess. We went into my motel room. I had rented it under a fake name just to have a safe house." Preston opened the laptop. "Okay, look at this," he said, pointing to a web of transactions. "Sheriff Dominic Vance earns a salary of $65,000 a year. Yet 3 months ago, he bought a lake house in the next county under an LLC. Cash for 100 grand. Where's the money coming from?" I asked. "That's the interesting part," Preston said, tapping a key. "It's coming from a construction company, Vance & Sons Construction, owned by his cousin. But here's the kicker. That company has won every single municipal contract in this town for the last 5 years. Road repairs, school renovations, the new town hall roof. They bid high, they win, and the sheriff gets a consulting fee. Kickbacks," I muttered. "Classic." "It gets worse," Preston said. I looked into Amelia's accounts. My stomach tightened. "Show me." She opened a joint account with him. Preston said gently, 2 weeks ago, under her maiden name, there's already $50,000 in it." I stared at the screen. 50,000? That was from our joint savings. The money we were saving for a dream vacation she kept talking about. She had drained it. She stole it. I whispered. "Technically, since it was a joint account, she just moved it," Preston said, his lawyer voice kicking in. "But morally, yeah, she's robbing you blind, Logan." I stood up and paced the small, musty room. The betrayal was absolute. There was no gray area left. No, maybe she's confused. She was an active combatant. "So what's the play?" Preston asked, watching me. "We have evidence of embezzlement, but it's circumstantial. If we go to the state police now, Dominic might have friends there. He could bury this. We need something undeniable," I said, my mind racing. "We need a confession, or we need to catch him in the act of something he can't explain away." "He threatened to frame you for drugs," Preston reminded me. "Exactly," I said, stopping in my tracks. A plan began to form. A cold, precise, dangerous plan. "He wants to find drugs in my truck. I'll give him what he wants." Preston raised an eyebrow. "Logan, do not tell me you're going to plant drugs on yourself." "No, I said I'm going to plant sugar." "Sugar." "Powdered sugar in little baggies hidden in the spare tire well, enough to look like a kilo of cocaine if you don't test it immediately." "You want to get arrested?" Preston asked, looking at me like I was insane. "I want him to think he's won," I said. "I want him to pull me over, find the stash, and call it in. I want him to brag about it on the radio. I want him to arrest me in front of the whole town because once I'm in that cell and the lab results come back as confectioner's sugar, he's going to look incompetent. And while he's distracted with that, you're going to raid his lake house." Preston smiled slowly. "You want me to break into his illegal property while he's busy gloating? I want you to find where he keeps the ledger," I said. "Guys like Dominic always keep a ledger. He doesn't trust his cousin. He has a hard copy of who paid him what. Find it. It's risky, Logan. If they field test that sugar." "They won't," I said confidently. "Dominic is arrogant. He'll see the bag. He'll see me. And he'll see his victory. He won't test it until the press conference." "You're gambling your freedom on his ego," Preston said. "I know him," I said. "He's a bully. Bullies don't check the details. They just want the punchline." I looked at the clock. It was 5 p.m. Amelia would be expecting me home. "I have to go back," I said. "I have to play the role for a few more days. Can you get the gear ready?" "Consider it done," Preston said. "But Logan, be careful with her. She's dangerous. A traitor in the wire is worse than an enemy at the gate." "I know," I said. I drove home. When I walked in, Amelia was cooking dinner. The smell of roast chicken filled the house, a domestic lime masking the rot. "How did it go?" she asked, not turning around. I apologized, I said, my voice trembling just enough to sound broken. He said he'd think about leaving us alone." Amelia turned. She smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. It was a smile of pity and triumph. "See," she said, walking over and kissing my cheek. "I told you, you just have to know your place, honey. Everything will be fine." I looked into her eyes and saw nothing but a void. "Yeah," I said. "Everything is going to be just fine." Little did she know, the sugar was already in the truck, and the war had just begun. The weekend crawled by an agonizing slow motion. I spent Saturday fixing the fence in the backyard, which gave me the perfect excuse to be outside, away from Amelia's suffocating fake kindness. Every time she brought me a glass of lemonade or asked if I needed a break, I felt a fresh wave of nausea. She was acting the part of the doting wife so well that if I didn't have the recordings, I might have believed her. That was the scariest part. How easy it was for her. On Sunday night, I executed the first phase of the plan. I went to the grocery store and bought 5 boxes of powdered sugar. Then, in the privacy of my garage with the door locked, I double-bagged the white powder into heavy-duty freezer bags. I wrapped them tight in duct tape, making them look exactly like the evidence photos of seized cocaine I'd seen in news reports. I taped the package underneath the spare tire in the bed of my truck. It wasn't hidden well. It was meant to be found. Monday morning arrived with a gray, overcast sky. The air smelled like rain. "I'm going to head into the city today," I told Amelia as I drank my coffee. "I need to see a specialist about my back." "Oh," she didn't look up from her phone. "Okay, be careful." "I will." I walked out the door knowing that within 5 minutes of my truck leaving the driveway, she would text Dominic. "He's leaving town alone." I drove slow. I stuck to the speed limit. I took the main road that passed right by the sheriff's station. I wanted them to see me. I wanted to be the easiest target in the world. I was 5 miles out of town on a stretch of highway bordered by thick pine woods when I saw it. The black SUV in my rearview mirror. No lights yet, just tailing me. My pulse remained steady at 60 beats per minute. "Here we go." The lights flashed, the siren chirped. I pulled over onto the gravel shoulder, putting the truck in park. I rolled down the window and placed my hands on the wheel at 10 and 2. It wasn't the young deputy this time. It was Dominic himself. And he wasn't alone. 2 other cruisers pulled up behind him. 3 officers for a routine traffic stop. He wanted an audience. Dominic walked up to the window, his hand resting on his gun. He was grinning like a shark. "Step out of the vehicle, Logan." "Reason for the stop, Sheriff?" I asked calmly. "We received an anonymous tip," he said loud enough for his deputies to hear. "Report of a vehicle matching this description, transporting illegal narcotics." "That's ridiculous," I said, injecting just the right amount of fear into my voice. "I'm going to the doctor." "Step out," he barked. I opened the door and stepped out. Dominic slammed me against the side of the truck, kicking my legs apart. He cuffed me tight. The metal bit into my wrists. "Check the truck," he shouted to his deputies. "Tear it apart." I stood there, face pressed against the cold metal of my truck, watching as they tossed my seats, ripped out the floor mats, and emptied my glove box. They found nothing inside. "Check the bed," Dominic yelled. "Check the spare." One of the deputies climbed into the back. He lifted the spare tire. "Sheriff, I got something." Dominic's eyes lit up. He walked over as the deputy pulled out the duct-taped brick. It looked damning. It looked like a kilo of pure cocaine. "Well, well, well," Dominic said, holding the brick up like a trophy. "What do we have here, Logan? Baking a cake? Or are you running product for the cartel?" "That's not mine," I stammered. "I don't know what that is." "Save it for the judge," Dominic laughed. "You are under arrest for possession with intent to distribute." "That's a felony, Logan. That's 20 years. He leaned in close to my ear. "I told you I'd make you disappear. Now I own you." They threw me in the back of the cruiser. As we drove away, I saw Dominic holding the brick, laughing with his deputies. He didn't open it. He didn't test it. He was too high on his own victory. Perfect. They processed me at the station. Fingerprints, mug shot, the orange jumpsuit. They threw me in a holding cell, a damp concrete box that smelled of bleach and vomit. I sat on the metal seat and waited. 1 hour passed, then 2. Dominic came by the cell. He was holding a cup of coffee, looking relaxed. "Amelia is devastated," he said, shaking his head. "I just called her. She's crying her eyes out. She says she can't believe she married a drug dealer." "I want my phone call," I said. "Sure," Dominic shrugged. "Call whoever you want. Nobody can help you now." He handed me a phone through the bars. I dialed Preston's number. "It's done," I said. "I'm in. Copy that." Preston's voice came through crystal clear. The distraction worked. Dominic's entire team is at the station celebrating your arrest. The lake house is empty. I'm breaching now. Find the ledger, I whispered. I'm in the office, Preston narrated. I could hear the sound of drawers opening in the background. Safe is cracked. Got it. Digital hard drive and bingo. A physical notebook. Logan, this is gold. He's got dates, amounts, names. The mayor is in here. Half the town council. Get out. I said get it to the state prosecutor. Already moving. By the way, did they test the drugs yet? No, I said he's saving it for the press. Beautiful, Preston laughed. Sit tight, brother, the cavalry is coming. I hung up and handed the phone back to Dominic. Lawyer? Dominic sneered. Something like that. The rest of the day was a waiting game. I sat in that cell meditating. I visualized the layout of the station. I counted the steps of the guard, but mostly I thought about Amelia. She had agreed to this. She knew he was going to plant drugs, or thought he found them. She was willing to let me go to prison for decades just to get me out of the way. The woman I had shared a life with was gone. In her place was a stranger. Night fell. The station quieted down. Then around 9 p.m., the heavy metal door at the end of the hallway opened. It wasn't a guard. It was Amelia. Dominic was with her, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back. She was wearing a black dress, looking like a grieving widow before I was even dead. You have 5 minutes, Dominic said to her. I'll be right outside. He gave me a gloating look and stepped out, closing the door, but leaving the viewing window open. Amelia walked up to the bars. She didn't look sad. She looked annoyed. How could you be so stupid, Logan? She hissed. I didn't do it, Amelia, I said, standing up and walking to the bars. You know I didn't. Stop lying, she snapped. Dominic showed me the drugs. A kilo of cocaine? Are you insane? Were you trying to get rich quick? I thought we were broke, I said softly. I thought we needed money. So, you became a criminal? She shook her head. I can't do this, Logan. I can't be the wife of a convict. It's humiliating. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded stack of papers. She slid them through the bars. What is this? I asked, looking down at the documents. Divorce papers, she said. And a transfer of deed for the house. Sign them. If you sign them, Dominic says he'll put in a good word with the DA. Maybe get your sentence reduced. I looked at the papers. Petitioner Amelia Vance. Wait, Vance. I looked closer. She had already started using his last name on the draft. Or no, Vance was Dominic's last name. You're really in a hurry, aren't you? I looked up at her. I just want to move on, she said, her voice trembling with fake emotion. Please, Logan, just sign them for me. For the love we used to have. Don't drag this out. I held the papers in my hand. This was it, the final betrayal. She was trying to coerce me into signing away my home while I was locked in a cage she helped build. I need a pen, I said. Her eyes lit up. She fumbled in her purse and handed me a pen through the bars. I took the papers over to the metal cot. I pretended to read them. Amelia, I said, my back to her. Do you remember our wedding vows? What? Logan, just sign the papers. For better or for worse, I quoted in sickness and in health. I turned around. I hadn't signed anything. You forgot the part about, until the sheriff offers a better deal. I ripped the papers in half, then in half again. I let the pieces flutter to the floor of the cell. Amelia's face twisted into pure rage. The mask dropped completely. You idiot, she spat. You stubborn, useless idiot. You're going to rot in here and I'm going to take the house anyway. Dominic will make sure you never see daylight again. We'll see, I said calmly. Get away from him. Dominic burst back into the room, seeing the torn papers. That's it. Visit's over. He grabbed Amelia's arm, pulling her away. She was shaking with anger, glaring at me with pure hatred. Enjoy prison, Logan. She screamed as he dragged her out. The heavy doors slammed shut. Silence returned. I looked down at the torn papers. I felt lighter. The last thread of attachment to her was severed. I didn't love her anymore. I didn't even hate her. She was just a target now. I sat back down on the cot and closed my eyes. Any minute now. An hour later, the commotion started. I heard shouting in the front lobby, doors slamming, the heavy boots of running men, not deputies' shoes, tactical boots, state police. Nobody move. Hands where I can see them. I opened my eyes and smiled. The door to the cell block flew open, but it wasn't Dominic. It was a state trooper in full tactical gear, rifle raised. Behind him walked a woman in a sharp suit, the state attorney general, and next to her was Preston. Preston pointed at my cell. That's him. That's the man you want to talk to. Dominic was dragged into the hallway a moment later, handcuffed. He was shouting, his face purple. This is a mistake. You can't arrest me. I'm the sheriff. The attorney general looked at him with ice-cold disdain. Sheriff Vance, you are under arrest for racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy, and we'll be adding false imprisonment to that list. False imprisonment? Dominic screamed. He had a kilo of coke in his truck. Preston stepped forward holding an evidence bag. He tossed it to the trooper. Test it, Preston said. Right now. The trooper opened the bag Dominic had seized. He used a field test kit, snapping the ampoule and dropping the white powder in. We all watched. Dominic held his breath. The liquid didn't turn blue. It stayed clear. Negative for cocaine, the trooper announced. It's sugar. It's just sugar. Dominic's face went white. He looked from the bag to me. I stood up and gripped the bars of my cell. You should have checked the ingredients, Dominic, I said softly. I have a sweet tooth. The realization hit him like a truck. He had arrested me for baking supplies. He had falsified a report, and while he was doing it, his entire criminal empire had been exposed. Get him out of here, the attorney general ordered. As they dragged Dominic away, he screamed my name. But it didn't matter, he was finished. But I wasn't done yet. Amelia, I asked Preston as the trooper unlocked my cell. She's at the house, Preston said. She doesn't know yet. I stepped out of the cell, rubbing my wrists. Let's go tell her, I said. The ride back to the house was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence that happens before a demolition. Preston was driving, his eyes scanning the dark road while the state trooper followed us in an unmarked cruiser. I stared out the window, watching the familiar trees of my neighborhood pass by. This was the street where I walked my dog. This was the street where I thought I would grow old. Now it looked like a foreign country. You ready? Preston asked as we turned the corner. I was born ready, I said, but my hands were cold. We pulled into the driveway. My house was lit up like a Christmas tree. Every light was on. I could see shadows moving in the living room. I could hear music, not loud, but enough to vibrate through the glass. She was celebrating. My wife, the woman who had just sent me to prison, or so she thought, was throwing a party in the home she believed she had just stolen. I got out of the car. The air was crisp. The trooper stepped out behind me, adjusting his belt. I walked up the steps. I didn't take out my keys. I didn't knock. I kicked the door hard. The wood splintered around the lock, and the door swung open with a violent crash. Bam! The scene inside was like a painting of pure betrayal. Amelia was sitting on the sofa, her feet up on the coffee table. She was holding a glass of wine. Sitting across from her, laughing, was Carl, Dominic's cousin, the crooked contractor. They were toasting. They froze. Amelia's glass slipped from her fingers. It hit the rug with a dull thud. Red wine bleeding into the white fabric like a gunshot wound. Logan, she gasped. Her voice was a strangled whisper. She stood up, knocking over a bowl of chips. How you're supposed to be in a cage. I finished the sentence for her. I stepped into the room, the broken door creaking behind me. Sorry to disappoint you, honey. The accommodations weren't to my liking. Carl scrambled up, looking for a way out. Now hold on, Logan. We were just sit down. The trooper barked from the doorway, his hand resting on his holster. State police. Nobody moves. Carl collapsed back into the chair, his face turning gray. Amelia looked from the trooper to me, her mind racing, trying to find a lie that would work. I could see the gears turning. She smoothed her dress, forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace. Logan, she said, her voice trembling. Thank God, I was so worried. Dominic told me they locked you up. Carl was just helping me call a lawyer. I stared at her. It was impressive. Really, the sheer audacity. A lawyer? I asked, walking closer. I picked up the divorce papers she had left on the side table, the one she thought I had signed in my mind. Is that why you were drinking the vintage Cabernet I saved for our anniversary? To help you focus on the legal strategy? I needed to calm my nerves, she cried, reaching for my arm. Baby, you have to believe me. I'm on your side. I let her touch me for a second. Her hand was warm. It used to comfort me. Now it felt like a parasite. Amelia, I said softly, stop. I pulled a small audio recorder from my pocket, the one I had retrieved from the evidence bag Preston gave me. I pressed play. Amelia's voice filled the room, tiny and sharp. I just wanted to be over. I'm tired of pretending to love him. He's so boring. He's nothing like you, Dominic. The silence that followed was absolute. Amelia's face crumbled. The mask fell off, shattering into a million pieces. She didn't look scared anymore. She looked hateful. You, she hissed, stepping back. You spied on me. I protected myself. I corrected. There's a difference. You creep, she screamed, suddenly lunging at me. You pathetic, paranoid creep. This is why I cheated. Because you're not a man. You're a robot. You just sit there and take it. Dominic is 10 times the man you are. Dominic is in handcuffs, Preston said, stepping forward. He's currently being processed for racketeering, fraud, and conspiracy, and you're named as a co-conspirator. Amelia stopped. What? The bank accounts. Amelia, Preston said, holding up a file. The joint account you open with him. The money laundering. You signed the checks. That makes you an accessory. She went pale. I didn't know. He told me it was legal. Tell it to the judge, I said. But you won't be doing it from this house. This is my house, she shrieked. I put 3 years of my life into this place. You put $0 into the mortgage, I said calmly. And the deed is in my name, which means you are currently trespassing. I pointed to the open door. Get out. You can't do this, she sobbed, falling to her knees. The fight was gone. Now came the begging. Logan, please. It's dark. I have nowhere to go. My mom is 3 states away. I have no money. You have $50,000 in that secret account, I said, cold as ice. Oh, wait. The state just froze. That tough break, please. She grabbed my leg. I'm sorry. I'll make it up to you. We can fix this. I love you. I looked down at her. I remembered the day we got married. I remembered promising to take care of her. But the woman on the floor wasn't the woman I married. She was a stranger who had tried to bury me. You don't love me, I said, pulling my leg away. You love the safety I provided, and now that safety is gone. I looked at the trooper. Officer, escort her off the property. Let's go, ma'am, the trooper said, grabbing her arm firmly. She screamed as he dragged her out. She screamed my name. She screamed curses. She screamed that she would ruin me. Then the door slammed. I stood there with Preston and Carl. Carl was shaking so hard the chair was vibrating. I didn't do anything, Carl squeaked. I just build decks, man. You build money laundering schemes, Preston said. Get up. You're coming with us. The trooper came back in and hauled Carl out. Finally, I was alone. I looked around the living room, the wine stain on the rug, the broken glass, the smell of her perfume still lingering in the air. I walked over to the wall and took down our wedding photo. I looked at it for a long moment. We looked so happy. We were such good liars. I dropped the photo into the trash can. Clunk, you okay? Preston asked from the doorway. I will be, I said. We need to get to the station in the morning. Preston said. Dominic is going to be arraigned. You need to be there. And you said you had something to tell him. I do, I said. The final nail. What is it? I walked to the window and looked out into the night. Amelia was standing at the end of the driveway, illuminated by the street lamp, making a frantic phone call. Nobody was coming for her. Dominic thinks he's a soldier, I said to Preston. He thinks he's fighting a war for his fallen brother. He thinks I'm the villain who got Caleb killed. And you're not? No. I turned to face Preston. I'm the one who held Caleb's hand while he bled out. I'm the one who wrote the letter to his family that Dominic never read because their father burned it. Dominic has spent 10 years hating the only man who actually tried to save his brother. Preston let out a low whistle. When he finds that out, it will destroy him, I said. And I'm going to look him in the eye when I tell him. I turned off the lights in the living room. The party was over. The house was dark. Let's get some sleep, I said. Tomorrow, we finish this. The next morning, the air was still and cold. I drove to the county courthouse with Preston. I wasn't wearing my work clothes. I was wearing my old service uniform, not the dress blues with all the medals. That would be too loud. I wore the simple everyday fatigues. I wanted Dominic to see me not as a retiree, but as the man he had been hunting for a decade. We entered the small interrogation room. It smelled like stale coffee and fear. Dominic was sitting at the metal table, cuffed to a bolt in the floor. He was a mess. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his face was unshaven, and his eyes were red-rimmed and hollow. The king of the county was now just a tired old man in a box. He looked up when I walked in. The hatred in his eyes was so pure it was almost beautiful. You, he growled. You did this. No, I said, sitting across from him. You did. His lawyer, a slick city transplant named Felix, stood up. My client will not be speaking with you. This is highly irregular. I'm not here as part of the state's case, I said, looking directly at Dominic. I'm here as Commander Logan, your brother's. Dominic flinched. It was the first time I had ever seen him show a crack in his armor. Don't you dare say his name, he whispered. You don't have the right. I have every right, I said. I was there, Dominic. I was there when he died. I know you were there, he shouted, lunging forward as far as the cuffs would allow. You sent him to his death. You sacrificed my little brother, so you could get a medal. Is that what they told you? I asked quietly. That's what the report said. Commander Logan ordered Private Vance to secure a forward position. Private Vance was killed by enemy fire. You sent him into the meat grinder. I shook my head slowly. That's not what happened, Dominic. That's the lie they told you. That's the lie your father wanted to believe. My father? I wrote your family a letter, I said. A 3-page letter detailing exactly what happened that day. But your father burned it. He couldn't accept the truth. It was easier to blame me. Dominic was shaking his head, his face a mask of confusion and rage. No, we were pinned down, I continued, my voice steady, trapped in an alley. The firefight was intense. Caleb panicked. He froze. He stood up when he should have stayed down. I leaned forward, my voice dropping. He took a round to the chest. He was dying. I ran out into the open to get him. I dragged him back behind cover. I took 2 rounds myself doing it. They shattered 3 of my ribs. I held his hand. Dominic. I put pressure on the wound. I told him he was going to be okay, but he wasn't. The last thing he said was, "Tell Dom I'm sorry." Dominic stared at me. Tears were streaming down his face now, cutting paths through the grime. "You're lying," he choked out. "Am I?" I slid a folded piece of paper across the table. It was a worn, creased photograph, a picture of me in a field hospital, my arm in a sling, a massive purple bruise covering half my chest. On the back, it was dated 2 days after the ambush. The doctors told me if the bullets had hit an inch to the left, I would have died with him. He stared at the photo. The lie he had built his entire life around was crumbling. The righteous anger that had fueled him for 10 years was turning to ash in his mouth. He wasn't the avenging brother. He was just a bully who had been tormenting the wrong man for the wrong reasons. "Why?" he whispered. "Why? Tell me this now." "Because your brother deserved the truth," I said. "He wasn't a hero who died following a bad order. He was a scared kid who made a mistake, and I was the man who tried to save him. That's the real story, Dominic. That's the ghost that has been haunting both of us." I stood up. "Amelia knew," I said as I walked to the door. "She knew about Caleb. I told her the story years ago. She knew how much pain you were in, and she used it. She pointed all that grief and rage at me so you too could steal my house." Dominic made a sound, a choked, guttural sob. It was the sound of a man completely and utterly broken. I didn't look back. Preston was waiting in the hallway. "He's done," Preston said. "The DA is offering him 40 years, no parole. After that little confession, he'll take it. He has nothing left to fight for." "Good," I said. We walked out of the courthouse and into the bright sun. It felt different now. The air felt clean. My phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. "You ruined my life. I'm going to tell everyone what you really are." "Amelia, she's not going to stop," I said, showing Preston the text. "Let her try," Preston smiled. "She has no credibility. The town already knows the truth. The story of Dominic's corruption is all over the local news. You're not the villain anymore, Logan. You're the man who took out the trash." I looked around the town square. People were looking at me differently. Not with fear like they did with Dominic. Not with pity like they did after the milkshake. They were looking at me with respect. A woman I recognized from the diner. The waitress who had watched me get humiliated walked up to me. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "for not doing anything. We were all so scared of him." "It's okay," I said. "I understand what you did," she said. "It took real guts." "Thank you." She walked away. I realized then that the revenge wasn't about destroying Dominic or Amelia. It was about reclaiming my own story. It was about standing up, not with my fists, but with the truth. But this town was still full of ghosts. Caleb, Amelia, the man I used to be. "Let's go home," I said to Preston. "What are you going to do now?" he asked as we drove. "I'm going to pack," I said. "My war here is over." 2 days later, I stood on the porch of the house for the last time. The for sale sign was already planted in the front yard. Preston had handled everything. The sale would be quick and the proceeds would go into a trust one could access anywhere in the world. The house was empty. I had donated most of the furniture to a local shelter. The things Amelia had loved, the expensive rugs, the fancy lamps, I gave away to people who actually needed them. It felt like cleansing. I walked to my truck, tossing my last duffel bag into the bed. As I opened the driver's door, a cheap, rusted sedan pulled up to the curb. The engine sputtered and died. It was Amelia. She looked different. The polished, arrogant woman who had scolded me in the diner was gone. In her place was someone who looked 10 years older. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She was wearing jeans and a sweatshirt that looked too big for her, and her eyes were puffy. She got out of the car and walked slowly up the driveway. She didn't have that confident strut anymore. She walked like she was afraid the ground might open up beneath her. "Logan," she said. Her voice was thin. "Amelia," I nodded, leaning against my truck. "I heard you're staying at the motel." "Yeah." She looked down at her shoes. It's temporary, until I figure things out." She looked up at the house. "You're really selling it?" "It's already sold," I said. "A young couple from the city. They have a baby on the way. It'll be a good home for them." Tears filled her eyes. "It was supposed to be our home." "It was," I said quietly. "But you never actually wanted a home, Amelia. You wanted a fortress, and you wanted a king, not a husband." "I was wrong," she whispered. A single tear slid down her cheek. "I was so wrong, Dominic. He used me, but I let him. I understand that now. I thought I deserved something more. I thought you were weak because you didn't fight everyone around you." She took a step closer, her voice cracking. "But you're the strongest man I've ever known. You took every one of them down without throwing a single punch. I see that clearly now." She looked at me with a desperate, fragile kind of hope. "Is it too late?" she asked. "For us, I mean. I have nothing left, Logan. No money, no friends left in this town. Everyone looks at me like I'm worthless now. Can't we just talk? Maybe try to start over?" I looked at her. I looked at the woman I had once promised to spend the rest of my life with. A pang of sadness settled deep in my chest, but it wasn't love anymore. It was pity. "Amelia," I said gently. "I forgive you." Her face brightened instantly. "You do?" "I do," I said. "Holding on to hatred is like drinking poison yourself and expecting the other person to suffer for it. I don't hate you. I don't wish anything bad on you. I opened the truck door, but I don't want you in my life anymore." The hope drained from her face, replaced by a devastating realization. "Forgiveness doesn't mean access," I said. "You made your choices. You betrayed me in the worst possible way, not just physically, but with your heart. You tried to destroy everything I was. I can forgive that, but I can never trust you again." "But where will I go?" she sobbed. "You're smart, Amelia," I said, climbing into the truck. "You'll figure it out, but you'll have to do it on your own. That's the only way you'll actually learn anything from this." I started the engine, the deep rumble of the diesel feeling almost like a heartbeat. "Goodbye, Amelia," I said. I didn't wait around for a response. I shifted into gear and pulled out of the driveway. In the rearview mirror, I watched her standing alone in front of that empty house, growing smaller and smaller, until she was nothing but a distant speck. Then I turned the corner, and she disappeared completely. I drove through town, passing the old diner, passing the sheriff's station where a new interim sheriff was already parking his car, passing the familiar park. I pulled onto the highway, the road stretching out ahead of me like a blank page waiting to be written. I rolled the window down, letting in air that smelled like pine, rain, and endless possibility. Reaching into my pocket, I pulled out my phone and dialed Preston. "You out?" Preston asked. "I'm clear," I said. "Where to next?" I smiled. For the first time in years, I had no mission waiting for me, no enemy to track, no target to hunt. "West," I said. "I hear the mountains are nice this time of year." "Good hunting, brother," Preston said. "No hunting," I replied, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. "Just living." I hung up and tossed the phone onto the passenger seat beside me. I wasn't Commander Logan anymore. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't a ghost. I was simply a man driving down an open road, finally, truly free.